What is left to look forward to? The betrayal of the king of the Sarkaz has come and gone. Babel has fallen, and yet this story chapter opens up upon Teresa telling Amia one of the many stories she told her during their time together. Teresa tells Amia of the plains of hope and the puppet who attempted to reach this land for her people, overcoming specters of despair and sadness, only to fail to cross the great river separating her from the plains of hope. One of the final stories Teresa would tell Amia before her assassination, and one that would plague the young girl's mind for years to come. And so, what does the young bunny have to look forward to? Is it possible for one such as Amia to reach those distant plains of hope that not even a monarch like Teresa could get close to? Can Amia find a home for those separated by race, by class, and by language? Can Amia truly embody the will of Babel? Perhaps not alone, but the story of Absolved Will Be the Seekers does not wish to tell the tale of individual heroes. No, the culmination of Arknights' Victoria crisis tells the story of those who seek to find or return to the place they call home. For the Sarkaz to return to Kasdal, for the Victorians to return to Londinium, and for those who still follow the dream of Babel to return to Babel. And of course, for those who have sinned to be absolved. Absolved Will Be the Seekers is the ultimate culmination of the story Arknights has been telling for the past 3 years. It's not perfect. Some of the Act 2 baggage is still there, but this story managed to hit all the beats that a climax needs to hit, while at the same time leaving some of the plot lines open-ended for future events. This is a gotcha after all. We need to sell more operators in the future, and you can't do that if you tie a neat bow on everything. So like we always do, let's dive into that juicy, succulent lore. And there are some crazy lore reveals during this chapter, even if we could have guessed some of it from previous events. So let's discuss them here to save some time later when we give ye what y'all came for, that story summary, so that you can put off reading the longest event in Arknights. It seems only right to start off this discussion of lore reveals from the Victoria Crisis storyline with the Sarkaz. Yes, I can be a little petty, even if I do like Chapter 14. There are a ton of new reveals about the Sarkaz, from revealing more of the background of the specific factions, to revealing why the Sarkaz suffer so greatly under Oripathy. And considering the game is based around the struggle of the infected, let's start with that. Nam, aka the First Originium. Much like you would imagine from something with the title of the First Originium, Nam marks the point when Originium truly became a curse to the Sarkaz. It is the culmination of Sarkaz suffering, and with the blood of the Tikaz so graciously provided by the Sanguinarch during the climax of Chapter 13, the Sarkaz now have the means to summon it. By channeling the blood through the shroud, this original piece of Originium will be summoned over Victoria, bringing about a catastrophe the likes of which has not been seen by any living being on Terra. The first Originium is the original piece of Originium that molded the Tikaz into the Sarkaz. It, alongside Civilisation, the crown of the Sarkaz, was found by Farchaser, the first king of the Sarkaz. Using their power, he created the first Kasdal, which prospered until the ancient and elder races of Terra sought to strike down this ancient city. In order to save his people from certain destruction, Farchaser used the first Originium to summon forth a great catastrophe to wipe out his enemies. But he was far from all-knowing in regards to the power of Originium, and through his actions he would doom the Tikaz. Both the Sarkaz and their enemies burned in this great catastrophe, with the Sarkaz being cursed with their weakness to Originium following this. Not only that, but it also caused the Sarkaz to be forever separated from the paradise offered by the assimilated universe, with 2 outcomes being possible for the Sarkaz destroyed by the first Originium: becoming a revenant or being trapped within the myriad of souls. So the myriad of souls are a hive mind of sorts. Not a true hive mind like the Seaborn, but something that links all the Sarkaz across Terra. The souls are the collective consciousness of the deceased Sarkaz from across their troubled history. Originally created following Farchaser tactically nuking Kazdel, the souls wander the sea of the assimilated universe, trapped within it but unable to be accepted by it. They scream out at the cruelty of their fate. This hatred, even though most Sarkaz can't hear it, affects the heart of their entire race, as all Sarkaz are born from these souls and return to them upon death. So the myriad of souls is in a sense the embodiment of the Sarkaz's fate throughout Terra's history. Never truly free to exist without the hatred that has been born as a result of how they were treated. As such, Teresa's goal of Babel managing to overcome the hatred of the Sarkaz was truly doomed to fail, as even though the souls of the Sarkaz love their king, the hatred that consumed them could not be overcome through traditional means. Luckily, through direct interference by the King of Sarkaz, with the assimilated universe, the souls of the Sarkaz were able to be freed from this never-ending purgatory, and the myriad of souls that both haunted and guided the Sarkaz will be nothing more than a memory to the future generations. Revenants are the souls of Sarkaz who are unable to pass on following the first Originium incident. They have lost their physical bodies and have been rejected by the myriad of souls. These ancient souls have been trapped in their purgatory since the destruction of the first Kazdel thousands of years ago. The ravages of time are just another piece of suffering for those forced to witness the long history of the Sarkaz. Despite being refused by the myriad of souls, they are the ones closest to it in the living world, and as such interpret the will of these souls most easily. The airship that channels the power of the shard is possessed by a revenant, and in that space may more easily interact with the world around them, as it is essentially their body. Following Teresa's actions in chapter 14, where she frees the souls of the Sarkaz from the assimilated universe, these poor revenants are once again left behind, but without the pain of all your dead race screaming in your ears 24/7. So that's a W. And speaking of W, W's guns have the revenant from the airship shoved into them after they managed to beat it up. Also, the Tin Man is most certainly one, cause there is no way we got androids running around modern Terra. IS-5 will certainly validate the statement, and I will not be checking out the spoilers to confirm it only. The Confessari, the super secret occult society that Shining originated from, is laid open to us in this event. From their origin following one of the old kings of the Sarkaz, known as the King of Usurping Kings, the king, after experiencing the power of the crown, wanted it all to himself, so he used his arts to create the long line of the Confessarius. Upon the death of the father, the soul would possess their offspring, so that this king may live to see the crown be his once more. So, for thousands of years, they have been aiding the king of the Sarkaz, the whole while studying how they might once again regain that power. They also created Nightingale to act as a cage that would trap the power of the king of Sarkaz, although that plan wouldn't exactly go to plan, cause one Shining gained a conscience and rebelled against her fate. And the Sarkaz lore already taking up a long time, so I don't want to dwell on them for much longer, but the ghouls that make up the Noxahar are on full display this chapter. The most powerful military force of the Sarkaz are a sight to behold, with even the full might of Victoria being ground to a halt by the sheer power they can bring to bear. Ignore the shard raining catastrophes down on the Victorians if you want to make that sound more impressive. Even with tactical catastrophes aiding them, what they accomplished is incredible. The Noxahar are similar to the Wendigos, as they both practice cannibalism. This lets them gain the memories and abilities of those they've eaten, so it's not just cause they freaky like that. Nezsalan, the Sarkaz god of war, is even able to drastically increase the survivability and durability of himself and his followers, being able to make them and himself regenerate from near death and fight for far longer than even the sturdy Sarkaz normally could. He also trained one of the Gigachads of Arknights Patriot, so you know he's built supremely. Next up on the chopping block is the Victorians, and we could really talk about the Dukes, but they're mostly the same as they always have been. We do get a rough number for Victoria's military size though, about 180,000 soldiers. Impressive? Reaching individual battles of World War I sizes. Jokes aside, Terra is a vastly less populated planet than Earth, so the army being this size isn't actually that unimpressive. It is even bigger than the current British army, so that's a Victoria W. More important than any of that though is the size of kings, the noble weapon that symbolizes the authority of the royal line. The size of kings, as we know, possesses the magical ability to prevent catastrophes, although for the most part it is just a normal sword. However, when Arknights' Excalibur is plunged into the stone of the sword, it is able to actually use these incredible abilities. It is more of a key than a legendary weapon. Throughout the centuries, it has been reforged over and over, but each time it and the Sword of the Stone come into contact, catastrophes threatening Londinium are sliced through. As such, the sword over time became more of a symbol of power rather than an actual weapon, with most who actually faced it in battle simply considering it a fancy sword and nothing more. Its power is also not tied to a specific hero or bloodline. Any who plunge the sword into the stone may take the place of a legendary hero who parted the very clouds themselves. However, of course, our lovely line, Not Saber, would be the one to actually accomplish this feat, earning her mass recognition from the Victorian soldiers and the dukes. Now, is it the ultimate counter to Originium that they all hoped? No, not really, but its power is more than enough to place the Victorians back on even ground with the Sarkaz. The first civilization back on their bullshit for being built differently, I fear, this chapter. This story gives us a quick dive into the civilization that boarded the Doctor. And we already knew they were broken, but we had no idea they were actually built like this. As you may or may not be aware, the first civilization were an ancient race of aliens that came to Terra from the stars. They were a civilization of incredible technological advancement, with the priestess studying the death of planets as a pastime during her life. You heard that right, she studied planets as they died. She and the Doctor met when his ship saved her from a dying star going supernova, although the Doctor admitted that even a supernova probably wouldn't have killed her. They were easily a Type 3 civilization, the masters of the material universe. But not even they were able to overcome the inevitable heat death of the universe, with them struggling to prolong the existence of their race while the universe died around them. They also got absolutely obliterated by a different race of aliens, the Observers. Not much is known of this race, but they defeated the first civilization with little effort. The Doctor even compared the Observers to lumberjacks cutting down trees. So the pecking order doesn't even have this race as the supreme one in the galaxy. Regardless, the Doctor and Priestess invented Originium to preserve their race in an artificial world, a universe of information, the assimilated universe. A paradise created by Originium, the dream of the Doctor and Priestess, introduced to us in Babel as the world where all information contained by Originium is stored. We get to see what it looks like directly in this event. An endless golden sea, stretching as far as the eye can see, with pale rhombus eyes visible in the sky. The assimilated universe doesn't follow the standard space-time conventions that we would be used to. When in this universe, Originium is king, a space where energy and matter do not exist. One where all life is barred from entering without joining the universe as Originium. Although the events of Chapter 14 provide the unique scenario required to see this sea with your own eyes. If you are one of the handful of people capable of manipulating the assimilated universe, you will find that reality here bends to your will, with the Doctor, Priestess, and Teresa being the only ones we know can accomplish this as of now. The story of Absolved Will Be the Seekers is the longest in Arknights' history, being even longer than Lone Trail. So I figure now that you have a good idea of some of the big lore concepts, we'll jump straight into the story and discuss the characters along the way, rather than spreading that discussion out over a separate section. So let's pick it up right where we left off. The Ferran skeleton lifebone has been captured, with Rhodes Island, the Exemplars, and the Sarkaz mercenaries preparing to launch an attack on the Shard using its abilities to travel through time and space. But unfortunately for the squad TM, the Sarkaz aren't just waiting for the Shard to be taken out. Teresa and Teresa's have finished their preparations to summon the first Originium, with Teresa taking to disguise aboard the airship that channels the Shard's power. At the same time, Nez Salem has rallied his forces to him and has deployed them across Londinium in the path of the advancing Victoria forces, preparing witchcraft altars that empower the Sarkaz under his command, combined with the power of the sword to crush the Victorians. The Dukes advance regardless, bringing the full might of Victoria's military against the Sarkaz, with Dublin temporarily joining forces with them in order to defeat their common foe. Unfortunately for everyone, having acquired the blood of the Tikaz, the sword begins generating catastrophes on a scale beyond normal means, literally reshaping the battlefield around Londinium, covering it in a constant barrage of Originium. This event is even capable of knocking Lifebone out, causing the squad to crash into a valley in the middle of the battlefield. Now stuck in the middle of an active war zone, the squad is forced to divide its strength. Siege leads the Exemplars, supported by Rhodes Island, towards the front lines, hoping to use the power of the Size of Kings to disrupt the destruction befalling her home. Closure accompanies her as the leader of the dispatchment of Rhodes Island, attempting to maintain the communication network across the devastated region to give Siege a fighting chance. While Siege is doing that, the Doctor, Amia, Calcit and Logos will attempt to track down the blood of the Tikaz and destroy it, to put a stop to Teresa's and Teresa's plans. That leaves Hodora, Enos, Ascalon and W to defend the Lifebone until it is useful again. As they only have about 3 days before the first Originium descends, there is no time to waste, and each group sets out immediately. First up on the ticket is how W got her new drip. Well, about 12 hours after everyone went their separate ways, one of W's scout teams goes missing. Suspecting it to be Manfred's doing, W leads a team out to investigate the region where they disappeared. She would stumble upon a cave after reaching the area, and immediately come under attack by a chimera. She manages to kill one of them, only to be cornered by a group of them. Out of options, she retreats further into the cave, where she discovers an ancient Sarkaz tomb. The guard of the tomb is an ancient Confessarius homunculus, Qualadcoa. The tomb is filled with incredible weapons and artifacts from long-dead Sarkaz heroes. But the most important thing is a ritual altar at the center. This tomb is the very place where Teresa was revived following her assassination. W attempts to destroy it, but is instead shown a vision of Teresa and the myriad souls of Sarkaz. Teresa reminds W that her time is over, but W can still go to places the former king of the Sarkaz could not. W chases after the spectre, but this echo of Teresa is long gone. So W takes her anger out on Qualadcoa by blowing up the tomb, ruining her current fit and requiring new clothes. No, I am not making this up. This is why she put this thing on. What I want to know is what former Sarkaz hero wore this. They were freaky for real for real. While W was on this journey of self-discovery, Manfred had launched his assault on Lifebone. Hodora and Enos defend the Fernwood skeleton while Ascalon attempts to assassinate Manfred, succeeding in planting her knife into Manfred's heart. Well, she would have if the Damasdi cluster had not been impersonating him. The real Manfred goes to have a talk with Hodora, chastising him for not returning to Casdell like he should have. Manfred and Hodora both understand the value of returning home, but Hodora still hadn't given up on saving as many Sarkaz as possible, so refuses to allow Manfred to do as he pleases. Hodora, despite having the best head on his shoulders, is however not built like that, and is soundly defeated by Manfred. With the Casdell Military Commission regaining control of the inactive Fahrenheit, W reunites with Enos and the two plan their next course of action. While all that is going down, Siege and the Exemplars as well as Amia's squad are both working on reaching their respective goals, with Amia and co falling into a trap set by Salas and the Confessarius, getting separated and swarmed by Chimera. Unfortunately for Salas, the Chimera are not built like that, and are pretty effortlessly defeated. The Doctor even gets to show off some of their knowledge of Originium, baiting one of the Chimera into attacking them just before some Originium grows, smashing the Chimera and genuinely frightening Salas and Amia. Siege's journey has been a little more eventful, with her running into Bagpipe squad while on their way to the front lines. Horn and Bagpipe have a good reunion, Mandragora Sims are left in shambles, and one of Victoria's Dukes arrives to discuss cooperation. Here Garden reveals to us that the King of Victoria is Speaker of Parliament, but the Speaker of Parliament is not necessarily the King of Victoria. This is basically what Siege's role will be once this whole crisis is over, I'm sure. The Duke also threatens the Exemplars to remind them of the pecking order when the Exemplars refuse to serve under the Dukes. Before the situation escalates to all-out combat, the Sarkaz attack, so the alliance of Dukes and Exemplars hold. During this attack, the Rhodes Island squad that initially travelled with Closure and Siege are wiped out, either by the attacking Sarkaz or the never-ending tide of Originium. Closure is also almost killed, if not for the timely intervention of Fang and Misery. And I know people would rather complain about Walter being a bad alter, but Fang literally puts on a new pair of clothes, and her biggest moment is this, and she fades into the background immediately afterwards. Tangent aside though, the size of kings must reach the front line, and the stone needed to activate it is located on none other than the Duke of Castor's ship. The Trilby Asher, Mr. Bellingham, the same one from Dagenbrucher's event if you didn't know, guides Siege to the Duke's ship. Another tangent, Bellingham is a very interesting side character. He doesn't hide the intention of Castor from Siege, he in fact tells her about all the schemes pertaining to her in order to make sure she knows what she's getting into. Of course, Siege agrees to continue on. She doesn't want glory or honor, she just wants to save her home. So Siege leads the Exemplars into the front lines of the battle where the Dukes and Sarkaz clash. The Dublin forces led by Ablana charge deep into the enemy force, using the purple fire of Ablana to burn the Sarkaz forces away while reanimating the fallen soldiers around her. Tensions between Dublin and Victoria are obviously not great, but Ablana is capable of destroying the Sarkaz altars with relative ease, so the alliance is holding for the time being. During the chaos of all the fighting, the Duke of Wellington's battleship breaks formation and charges into the heart of the Sarkaz force, straight at Nez Salam. Wellington is actually able to hold his own quite well, but is worn down by the Sarkaz. So he gathers his forces and retreats from the front line. His sudden retreat causes the other Duke's forces to be surrounded by the Sarkaz. Nez Salam realizes that Amia is hunting down the blood of the Tikaz, so he also retreats from the battlefield, but before he goes, leaves one final bit of despair for the Victorians, targeting the battleship of Castor, destroying the Glorious. As the stone is the most important thing on the battlefield currently, Siege rallies the Exemplars for one final push. The cost of failure is more than just the death of a Duke, but the destruction of the remaining morale of the Victorian army. Bellingham once again ignores the orders of Castor to take the Sigh of Kings from Siege, believing her to be the most worthy of the honour of bringing hope to Victoria. The Exemplars even receive the aid of the last Steam Knight, who crashes into the battlefield to protect the Sighs of Kings from corruption. So, in one final charge, Siege reaches the Stone of the Sword and plunges the blade in, releasing a burst of golden light that slices through the catastrophe and dispels the Originium pollution in the air. It doesn't destroy the shard or end the threat to our homeland, but Siege's actions have given the mother of all morale boosts to the Victorians, and the tentative alliance between the Dukes and the Exemplars is solidified into a truly united front. While all that was occurring, the battle against the Confessarius was unfolding. A battle on two fronts. On one front, the squad led by Amia discovered the altar being used to channel the blood of the Tikaz, and on the other front, Shining confronting her brother, the Confessarius, in order to rescue Nightingale. Nez Salam, intending to defeat Amia and prevent the ritual from being stopped, is held at bay by Logos. He made sure to put on the Rhodes Island drip too, that's how you know he was locked in. The young Banshee unleashing his full might against the ghoul, quite literally burning his body away, slows the advance of Nez Salam. Logos keeps casting until his bone whistle and pen break in his hands, before Nez Salam sends him plummeting off a cliff. But his work was done. Nez Salam was severely injured and was unable to confront Amia. Logos is thankfully rescued by his mom before he drowns to death, so he'll be back to fighting soon. Team Amia is slowed down by Salas, and Amia is unable to use the full force of her power because of the Confessarius using Nightingale as a cage for the King of Sarkaz's power. But as mentioned, Shining is planning to put a stop to that, and lucky for her, she got some serious backup of her own. The Radiant Knight of Casimiras crashes into the battlefield as a beam of light, first in Maria Null, and now here. She is posed up like she's in an edit too. Girl, go save your friend, superhero landings can wait. The combined might of Null and Shining are able to push the Confessarius back, allowing Shining to awaken Nightingale, who immediately unleashes the full might of her arts to seal the Confessarius, allowing for Null to break the seal on the Sarkaz crown and Shining to impale him. Khaled Koa arrives just in time to bail him out though, so his eventual fate will have to be dealt with in the Shining Altar event, hopefully. Also, Nightingale low-key shattered her soul, and that absolutely can't be good for someone. Also, complete tangent, this is the second time that the followers have done anything together on screen, and for a faction that has been in the game since launch, that seems kinda criminal. Luckily, we will have more of it in the future, I pray. Salos also immediately gets beaten by Amiya after getting her strength back. Not that you expect her to put up much of a fight. Thalas, however, sacrifices herself to complete the ritual to summon the first Originium. So even though they technically won, things aren't over yet. The first Originium descends onto the battlefield. Teresa plans to fly the airship directly into it in order to reach the assimilated universe, so a race to stop the airship begins. To do that, the gang needs Lifebone, so W rallies the troops to take back the bones. She successfully manages to wake the firmament up, so Lifebone begins to teleport to the Doctor's location. Askeladd and Manfred get to have their own epic showdown. The two children taken in by Teresis and Teresa once again find themselves battling each other one-on-one. Manfred, taking advantage of Askeladd's injuries from her fight with the Damasdi cluster, gains the upper hand, and upon seeing Lifebone activating, pulls out a switch to detonate bombs he planted along the skeleton. But Manfred hesitates for a moment. Lifebone is the key to taking so many Sarkaz home, and in this moment of hesitation, Askeladd tackles him off the firmament, causing the two to disappear into the void left behind by Lifebone's activation. After Amiya's squad returns to the Lifebone, the group immediately set after the airship. The ship is already heading straight for the first Originium, so time is short. Unable to withstand the barrage from the airship's weapons, W opts for crashing the skeleton directly into it so that boarding actions may take place. The Doctor, Khalced, Amiya, and W attempt to sneak to the core of the ship to disable it, but the Revenant controlling the airship immediately notices them and separates them using its abilities to control the ship's interior. Amiya is isolated from the group, Khalced is trapped in a separate space without Monster, and W, the Doctor, and Monster get to have a group bonding session. The Revenant sends wave after wave of shadows resembling the assassins who killed Teresa after W and the Doctor, but aside from pissing W off, it only delays them from reaching the core. Duo is unfortunately not able to destroy the core, as the spiritual nature of the Revenant makes it extremely resistant to physical damage. Amiya, also confronted by the assassins of Teresa, eventually reaches the core, where she once again confronts the hatred of the Sarkaz directly. Tapping into the memories of the Revenant before her, she sees the tragic life they have lived, witnessing the original summoning of the first Originium by Fourchaser being one of the sacrifices denied by the myriad of souls. Amiya sympathizes with the Revenant, of course, but refuses to accept that its hatred should be passed down to the future generations. Summoning the power of the King of Sarkaz, Amiya binds the Revenant, allowing W to enter their shadow and find the core. W witnesses even more of their life than Amiya did, even seeing the point where the Revenant becomes the soul furnace of Kazdel. She, however, tells him to shut the fuck up with the whining and quite literally tears the shadow apart to find its core. The core of this Revenant being the weapon she wields as a Walter. The Revenant, in one last act of desperation, attempts to destroy the ship to bring Amiya and co down with it, but they luckily escape back to the Lifebone. Not before it decides to reveal to everyone present about what actually transpired back at Babel, revealing to everyone present, the Doctor included, how Teresa actually died. The ship is kinda falling apart right now, so this little delay tactic was actually kinda genius, and just as the group reach Lifebone, the nerves attaching the skeleton to the airship break, leaving W, Khalced, Logos, Amiya, and the Doctor trapped. Right then, Teresa appears and reignites the Revenant so that the airship can reach the first Originium. The instant they make contact with it, the world around them is covered in Originium, consuming everything in a tide of crystal. Waking up in what seems to be Rhodes Island, in what is implied to be its form when the Doctor used it as a starship, the Doctor wakes up to a familiar face, one that you might expect, the true ex-wife, the Priestess. She asks the Doctor what exactly they had been dreaming about, to which the Doctor informs her of their life on Terra. In response, Priestess tells the Doctor about their past together, from meeting following the death of a planet, to their journey together leading to the creation of Originium. Although not specifically about the first civilization itself, their conversation reveals a ton about the technology level of that race. Even with that technology though, the Priestess is unable to return the Doctor's memories to them, but even still, she's happy that a part of the Doctor remembers her. So, she parts ways with the Doctor, knowing that one day the two will meet again. And upon awakening from this encounter, the Doctor finds themselves within the assimilated universe, where they are shown their heart's desires. a world where Ace and Outcast lived, one where Tallulah was rescued from the Black Snake and continued to go down the right path, and of course a world where Frost Nova lived and became an operator for Rhodes Island. After finally seeing Frost Nova, the Doctor recognizes that these are their subconscious desires made manifest, and manages to escape from the illusions. The squad manages to meet up after this atop a manifestation of the Rhodes Island landship. The Doctor's subconscious wishes might have trapped them within an illusion, but also prevented them from being turned into information within the Golden Sea. In the middle of the sea stands a tower, one that could not exist in this place under any other circumstance. The tower created by the King of the Sarkaz, the Tower of Babel, the final destination of Teresa's dream. However, the myriad of souls stands between them and Teresa, so once again Logos faces down the unstoppable hate of the Sarkaz for Rhodes Island, holding the line to allow Amia and co. to defeat Teresa. Atop the Tower of Babel, they find the airship Revenant, now at peace, and the one who calmed their hate, Teresa. Here Teresa reveals her goal, to end the hatred of the Sarkaz and give her people a new future. Using her control over Originium, she will liberate the myriad of souls, and remove the influence their hatred has had over the Sarkaz since their inception. That is why, even after being revived, she remained with Teresa's. She needed to recreate the ritual that damned her people. Amia rejects Teresa, however. Teresa has abandoned those not born of the Sarkaz in her vision of peace, and so Teresa issues a challenge to Amia. Overcome her and fully inherit the title of the King of the Sarkaz and the burden of the Dream of Babel. Teresa, using her control over Originium, has reached the level of strength she never possessed in life, able to alter the very structure of the world around her. She even recreates the power of Civilisation using Originium, so it truly becomes a duel between Sarkaz kings. When in her mind, Teresa tells Amia of her failings. She failed to unify the Sarkaz, she failed to end the threat of Originium, and she failed to stop the cycle of violence. Amia, accepting the responsibility laid upon her by Teresa, is able to access newfound strength within the Black Crown. Using the powers left to her by Teresa herself, she manages to overcome the former King of the Sarkaz with purifying flames. In a heartfelt flashback following her defeat, we see the moment Teresa decided to place her dream on the shoulders of Amia. It was shortly after the young girl arrived in Babel. Teresa watched her comfort a dying infected patient, showing no hesitation or fear in being close to them. Despite her young age, Amia was under no illusion that the person before her would live, but she still wanted to comfort them. Teresa remembers watching Amia mourning this infected person she barely knew, crying into the doctor's arms while they consoled her. It was then, looking at that young child, after only knowing her for a brief time, that Teresa decided upon her successor, an outblood king, one who could look beyond race or infection status, one who sees people for what they are, people. And here, years later, when she herself had strayed from her dream, was the one whom she trusts this responsibility upon, stronger than she could ever imagine. Although successful in overcoming Teresa, they had failed to stop the descent of the first Originium, which had returned to reality. The old Tower of Babel had been set ablaze, but Teresa congratulates Amia for burning away the old decay. The symbol of Amia should not be one of the Sarkaz, but of all of Terra. Using the last of her strength, Teresa liberates the souls of the myriad Sarkaz, and as her soul is a part of it, following her death, she must leave with them. But she has enough time for a few goodbyes. She is happy to see that Amia has grown up well, even without her. She thanks Calcet for once again being by her side as she passes, and she comforts the crying W, who still doesn't want her to leave. So Teresa fulfills one more promise. She gives W a name, one that is entirely hers, Wizardel, a wish for home. She and this new doctor also finally get to meet each other properly. Teresa is glad the Doctor is now living true to themselves, no longer burdened by his past responsibilities, but someone who lives life in the current era, taking pleasure in the little things. One who can finally look forward to the future. She is glad the Ghost of Babel no longer exists, as they would have only made things worse for all of Terra. Teresa once more entrusts her dream with the Doctor. They understand Originium and are capable of leading Terra towards a bright future. even though the destruction that came from their people might once again return for Terra. Teresa is also able to speak to Logos one last time, thanking him for standing by Rhodes Island to the end. Logos questions where she and the other souls are headed to, but Teresa has no answer. This is entirely new waters, and their fate will have to be discovered as they go. Logos honors the souls passing with a special prayer that marks the end of the souls connecting the Sarkaz and the ascension of their beloved king. Across the battlefield, all the Sarkaz sense the departure of the myriad souls. Some shed tears, some see visions, and some just relieve a sense that the weight of history has been lifted from them. Teresa speaks to his sister one last time, unable to hear her voice or any of the souls anymore. He recognizes the efforts of every Sarkaz within the myriad of souls who have passed on and vows to continue along the path laid before him. The assimilated universe also begins to reassert its dominance over the Tower of Babel now that Teresa isn't here to reinforce it, but the gang narrowly manage to escape before it consumes them. The airship Revenant is still around, as they were never able to join with Originium, so Wizardel puts them to work in trying to stop the airship from crashing, but they no longer have any control over it after reaching the assimilated universe. Emiya, as the airship is going down, finds herself once again speaking to Teresa about the puppet and the planes of hope. Yeah, I didn't just open the video on that for no reason, it's callback time. Here, Teresa tells her about those who supported the puppet, their friends, family, and allies. Emiya realizes that this is all within the black crown of the Sarkaz. Teresa is gone, but a little bit of her remains within the crown, guiding Emiya forward. One who, like the friends of that puppet, will be by her side forever. So Emiya, assisted by the shadow of Teresa, uses her full power to land the airship safely, with a pretty fantastic CG depicting the two together. Following successfully surviving the crash, Wizardel announces the revival of Babel, and broadcasts to all Sarkaz soldiers that the war is over and they should retreat immediately. Without the airship, the shard is useless as it doesn't have the ship channeling its power, so the exemplars are free to march towards Londinium, intent on reclaiming their home. It is at this critical moment, when the Victorian forces are chasing down the retreating Sarkaz, that Dublin plays their hand. The Duke of Wellington lines up their battleships against the Victorian lines, and Eblana announces the independence of Tara from Victoria. A pretty bold move, with cities all across the land of Tara raising this new flag. But as Victoria is in no place to fight a war on two fronts, Castor proposes a truce with Dublin to allow time for Victoria to lick their wounds. But the story surrounding Tara is far from over, with Reed watching the purple flames of her sister from across the country. Although the war is technically over, following this point the story ends on one final cliffhanger. Teresa's claiming the first Originium. The power to change all of Terra lies in his hands. He vows to continue down the path Teresa has created for the Sarkaz, and to do that he will cast off the spectre that still haunts them, the creators of Originium. So Victoria is saved, and the Sarkaz are free to return home. Well, those that survive the onslaught of the Victorian army, cause I imagine they won't be all that kind to them after what they've done. But with the insane amount of Originium pollution that has struck Victoria after the shard's activation, I can't imagine they will be in much of a hurry to start another war. Although with Teresa's possessing what he does, they and all of Terra might not have a choice in the matter. I'm going to be interested in seeing what Victoria becomes going forward. They are probably the country with the most infected in their military and government structure at this point, and with Reunion running around Victoria at the minute, it could lead to some very interesting stories down the line, especially in the potential Tallulah vs Eblana round 2 fight, with Tallulah walking alongside the Victorian infected, but that's just speculation. With the Victoria crisis more or less wrapped up following this chapter, excluding the siege event we'll get in 6 months, the future of Arknights' main story is rather unclear. I imagine it will further build on the relationship between Priestess and the Doctor, but that can literally run in tandem with whatever event is occurring on Terra. Teresis will probably be involved too, but what he'll do and whether he'll be an ally to Rhodes Island is still up in the air. I would like to imagine he would work with Teresa's successor, but considering the Doctor is right there, it might not work out in that end. I do like Teresis, and I do hope he gets a proper chapter or event focused around making him the true main antagonist that is beaten at the end, or at least making him into a villain that we can overcome because he's a very good and fascinating character. Probably my favorite from the Act 2 batch of antagonists. Setting all that speculation aside, I will say that I enjoyed the story. We finally got a lot of the payoff we've been waiting for during Act 2. Siege's hero journey, though not a traditional one, was great to see come to its only conclusion. Likewise, the story of Shining a Nightingale, which really didn't receive much focus at all this arc, had a fantastic climax, although unlike Siege's, there was much more of a story left to see. But Noel was involved, so of course I liked it. I only wish she showed up a chapter or two earlier so we could spend more time with her. But she had a cool entrance, and I'll get over it. Amiya, Teresa, and the Doctor received an incredible send-off in this story that had been built up basically since the beginning of the game. The burden of the King of the Sarkaz and the sins of the Ghost of Babel were intrinsically tied to Teresa, and seeing Amiya and the Doctor finally get that closure from her was heartwarming. Amiya especially really impressed me during this chapter. Her finally getting confirmation as to the Doctor's actions during the fall of Babel was heartbreaking, and even the closure she received from Teresa, left behind by Civilisation Atona, while useful, showed Amiya that no one had all the answers for her. But Amiya has accepted the duty placed upon her by Teresa, becoming the storyteller Teresa hoped she could be, overcoming the old Sarkaz King, and becoming a beacon of hope that could potentially achieve the dream of Babel. Also, her getting a fully animated transformation sequence. Hippogriff cooked with that so hard. I want more stuff like that in future events. We should be getting something like that every anniversary from now on, because that was fire. Stories I didn't like as much, well, Dublin has kind of been sticking around since chapter 9. I don't dislike the story being told with them, but Hippogriff has made some weird decisions with them. Positives first, I like how they declared independence. Doing it during wartime makes sense, and it doesn't really undermine Victoria's strength directly, which is good. Unfortunately, they did kinda just bury Mandragora earlier in this event. Literally off screen, in a bit of dialogue Horn mentions. After what happened to her in chapter 10, I get how she could be dead, but if that's how she went out, I'm a little disappointed. I will still hope for her being playable regardless though, and I know there are many others like me out there, the true Mandragora believers. Also Walter, she's cool but definitely suffering from Lowlight's favorite OC syndrome. Do I dislike her? No, but by the end of the event, Wizardale has kinda been appointed the leader of Kazdal and was just able to announce the end of the war. I feel like something is missing there, like a whole event around actually making that a reality, other than the dead Sarkaz King told me so guys, trust. Like I get that she's well respected within the mercenary community, but why does the military commission even listen to her? They still have a command structure relatively intact. In fact, only Teresa is dead. The Confessarius, while technically not leader, is still around. Nez Salam is still around. Teresa's is still around. Manfred is a little worse for wear, but still around. So, W just being able to announce the war is over? Kinda cringe, but maybe there'll be an event that covers some of the events that happened during that period of time between the whole W announcing the end of the war and the Victorians reaching Londinium. Because I get that without the show, the Sarkaz are at a bit of a disadvantage, but them just immediately breaking and fleeing the battlefield and all of Londinium in general is a little underwhelming, but I guess it makes sense. Maybe I just wanted a big final battle, but there's still time for that. So I'm going to throw it over to you. What do you think of this event? Is Absolved will be the Seeker's hot garbage? Is it peak fiction? Is it the best main story chapter? Let me know down below, because currently I'm putting it in the top spot. Yes, it has its problems, but the overall delivery of this chapter was top notch. Does it save Act 2 if you didn't like the previous chapters? Maybe, but that's a question only you can answer. For me, it ends the story arc off at an incredibly high beat, but I might make a video on my thoughts of the whole arc later. So if you want to hear those thoughts, let me know. For now though, big ups to Plus Minus, by the way. He made the thumbnail for me and I just want to let him know that I appreciate it. If you haven't seen any of his content before, head on down to the description and you'll find the link to his channel. And with all that being said, y'all be good people, and I'll talk to you in the next one.